Hey, everybody. It is Fearless Friday. Happy Friday. I'm going to try my best to let a few people come in here. What they say, get in here, get in here. um, I appreciate you guys for joining and tuning in whenever you can, whether that's catching it on replay or catching me live. I so do appreciate it. It's been fun so far. Um, And I have last week I had a really good friend of mine. Her name was Joy Warren, and we had a really cool interview, an awesome interview. We talked about thriving with your tribe, and it's almost impossible to do anything great by yourself. And so we talked about that last week, and this week I wanted to flash back. I wanted to go back to a couple of months ago. Um, a few months ago, I was really blessed to sit down with an interview that really kind of shifted my focus as far as building content that would go from here on out. I started Friday Chats because I've obviously we've all noticed the wave and the trend of going social. Everything has to be online. People don't know where to find you if you're not on Facebook, if you're not on Instagram. And for those of you that have been tuning in, like, you know that that's the typical conversation. That's what we're talking about. Branding yourself on social media, putting together plans, what's relative, what's the new trend. Pause for a moment. One of my really good friends from college, like, I just thought about this. We were joking recently, and he was like, "You were on my Discover page, so I need your autograph." And I was like, "Man, whatever." Like, I didn't think, I was like, that wasn't a big deal. I thought that was just like metrics or whatever. And then he blew up on TikTok. Like, dude went viral this week from joking about getting each other's autographs last week to being viral this week. My friend was like, he couldn't even drive down his block. Okay. He got about over like 500,000 likes and follows on TikTok from something so small, and that just completely like sent him virtual. And so I just thought that was a really good example of the power of social media right now, and why you have to kind of be social if you want to make a wave. And so I just thought that was interesting. Go follow him at Moski AB1M. Yeah, he definitely blew up. Snoop Dogg, everybody just shared his stuff. And I just thought that was so interesting to this conversation that we've been having about the power of social media. So this week, like I said, I wanted to take you guys back to an interview that I did a few months ago. I'm going to just play it for those of you that have not seen it. If those of you that have seen it, then bear with us. But I want to take you guys back to a talk that I got to have with someone that is making waves in the culture right now. He is a thought leader, but he's also a pastor and a minister. He is the official dean of Bishop Jakes' School of Divinity in Houston, Texas, in Dallas, Texas, and he's making such a major wave in our generation. And I've had the privilege to call him a former client and colleague. But I want you guys to check this interview out. We talked about everything involving culture and justice, and how important it is to push past certain barriers to reach the people that we feel like we're called to reach with the gospel, people that aren't really coming to church and looking for the stuff that we may have, but are looking for something. And so we talked about that. We talked about Simone Biles and the Olympics. And importantly, we got to talk about what it means to be fearless. And so I'm going to show this interview, and I'm going to be still here watching. So make sure you leave me some comments and some chats, and engage in the conversation with me as well. And so here it is. Take a look at this exclusive interview with Dr. Antipas Harris.
What does that mean to you when you first hear that? Like, what's the first thing that kind of jumps out to you?
Well, of course, thanks for being here. I have the opportunity to be on. But when I hear about being fearless in America, Black America, I think about a history of people who really fought for the rights that we now have. And the odds that they fought against are unbelievable. And I think that sometimes, because our history is so decorated with some great things and a lot of terrible things.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right. Right. So give us the tools. So how, as you teach your theology students, so how do we almost break down those confines
I think some people may be having
of
trouble hearing the video.
religion
If you
to
can, drop in the
actually
chat if you can
reach
hear this
those
or
that are
not.
over the
And if
wall,
not, I'll have to
that may be
figure out
falling
another
off
way
the
to get
cliff,
this to
that
you guys.
may
But
not
drop in
come
the
to
chat and
church to
let me know if you
hear
can
it,
actually
may
hear this
not want to
interview.
have
I'm
a
going to try it one more
conversation
time.
with a pastor or someone with the collar on, but what does that mean to you when you first hear that? Like, what's the first thing that kind of jumps out to you?
Well, of course, thanks for being here. I have the opportunity to be on. But when I hear about being fearless in Black America, I think about a history of people who really fought for the rights that we now have. And the odds that they fought against are unbelievable. And I think that sometimes because our history is so decorated with some great things and a lot of terrible things, it's hard to believe that a country like this had such a difficult history that it had. And the temptation is to oversimplify, but it's very complicated. And for people historically to have been so willing to put themselves out there for the good of posterity, it 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 defines what it means to me to be fearless and Black in America. You can't hide out. You can't sort of enjoy your own success or yander in the wilderness of complacency. But if you want to really be of a benefit to society, you got to be willing to take whatever gifts that you have and use them in such a way that will often defy the odds and sometimes will ruffle a lot of feathers. But we learn from the past that you cannot be complacent and you cannot let another person or other people determine your worth. There's just no time for folding ourselves into somebody else's agenda, but rather using our gifts and talents to fight for a better future. And I think everybody needs to do that, but particularly African Americans who have a history of coming this far because of what others sacrificed and made happen for us.
Absolutely. So what do you think, Dr. Interface, is one of our greatest challenges today? I guess I would say really ascertaining whatever the goal is as a people, whether that's just our, freedom from the oppressive mindsets that we've, had forever. Because as you obviously, I'm sure, even teach, we can be out of the system or out of the confines of, the high school to jail pipeline. But if our mindsets aren't renewed, then we may go back. So what do you think is the biggest challenge for us when we come out of certain situations and may have greater opportunities to actually ascertaining those goals? Particularly, I would say within the field of arts and entertainment and politics.
What are the greatest challenges?
Yeah, what do you feel is
the greatest challenge is to smell what we define as success based on the barometer of material gain or following or some notoriety. Nowadays, part of the challenge is it's easy to become a celebrity. Just grow your social media platform and suddenly you can command all kind of assets. You can make money that way. I know people who, or I've met people who nobody really knows, and they have, 1 million followers, or at least 1 million follow them and know them, and they monetize these platforms in such a way that it becomes so commercialized that it's difficult to really speak any transformation for fear of losing followers. And you can't really make meaningful change trying not to be offensive. I'm thinking about the likes of Nina Simone, right? Or folks who, those artists from back in the day, Nina Simone, Mississippi Goddamn. I mean, she was really being prophetic in her own way, sort of speaking against injustice. And is you have to, whether people agree with that language or not. One thing we do know is, Marvin Gaye and people like that, they were writing music that was social critique. So far as I'm concerned, Tupac, a lot of what Tupac was saying in his rap. And you have to be willing and to risk using your gifts and platforms to speak in such a way that transform people's minds. I'm about James Baldwin. He was crude, but he said, listen, I can't drive a truck. I can't, do a lot of things. He said, one thing I can do, and he used a vulgar word, is mess with your mind. So his point is that he had a talent and he wanted to challenge people to think. And when we think about the arts is a mechanism, a vehicle to spread a message. And instead of sort of celebrating one's own wealth and success in music, like some artists do, use that platform and opportunity to infiltrate people's ways of thinking. That is so crucial. The ways of thinking, but just not the ways of thinking, because their research shows that there's a disconnect between the way people think and the way people act. Sometimes they know the right things to say, but they don't really do it. Knowing and doing it, saying and doing. So in other words, in this context of race, we can say, I know we're supposed to love everybody. I love everybody. Jesus is about love, and walk right out and participate in a system that is oppressive to people and demeans them terribly. So there's a disconnect in knowing what's the right thing to say, what the right thing is to believe, and then living that out. And systems make that difficult sometimes, because systems are in structures in such a way that you can benefit from a system that oppresses other people. So why would I want to change it?
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right. So
You see what I'm saying?
Right. So give us the tools. So how, as you teach your theology students, so how do we almost break down those confines of religion to actually reach those that are over the wall, that may be falling off the cliff, that may not come to church to hear it, may not want to have a conversation with a pastor or someone with the collar on, but they need what it is that we carry specifically as Christians. How do we balance the two, breaking out of those religious confines and actually reaching over without dampening our anointing? Or could you give us a little bit of, could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, the fear is always, how do you behave in such a way that you can keep the structures and the systems and the belief systems that one has already had in the past and reach out to something new? My thing is that you have to risk all of that. Either you love God, and sometimes the question is, do I love God or do I love the church? Because there are some systems in place that fly in the face of the love of God. Because sometimes we love church and we want to do what we've always done because it becomes a cultural expression for us. But could it be that faith and religion runs interference with love of God?
Yeah,
I think it could be. Now, I don't think by definition that's the case, but I do think that could happen, and it could happen it happens all the time. It happened in the Bible. When Jesus says, he says, listen, there was a man who was going down to Jericho and he fell among thieves. And there was a Levite that came by and passed by on the other side. There was a priest who came by and passed by on the other side. Those were two prominent positions in what we would consider the church, or the faith community. They were heading to church, and their love for church ran interference with the call of God on the road to Jericho. That happens today. Sometimes we're busy wanting to be committed and faithful to the church that we fail an opportunity to bear witness in the public square. A man or a woman who is stripped, beaten, and left half dead. And so it happens as it relates to the homeless population. It happens, and the arts can help us jolt our attention. In fact, Jesus was using art because it was a parable. Parable is an art. It's an artistic expression. So he used parables to paint a picture to kind of help the Levite or the lawyer who asked him the question about who would inherit eternal life. So he was using a parabolic or artistic expression of his day to highlight how life of faith can interfere with the love of God in others.
Wow. Powerful, yes. And I never even thought about it that way. That's why you are Dr. Antipas Theologian. Quick random question, or a quick left. Amanda Gorman. You saw, I'm sure you saw the inauguration where she delivered.
Oh, yeah.
I still don't have the words for it. But as a spoken word poet myself, it was that was probably one of the one life-changing moment for me.
It was amazing.
What was your thoughts when you were watching that? You know, obviously much older than Amanda, but also a person of quite of influence, you know, to where you can understand, I guess, the level of pressure to be able to stand before people and present such a message. Because she wasn't just, you know, it wasn't just, you know, butterflies and flowers. Like she really delivered a message. What was your thoughts when you watched that? Dr.
Well, when I watched that, thanks for asking and bringing her up. What a tremendous talent, isn't she?
Yeah.
What I thought when I saw that was two things. First of all, she does have a history, or at least something I read about that got me thinking about it. She has a history of some type of disability, is what was believed that she had. When I was a little boy, I had a disability, so that brought back to mind my own learning challenges and shortcomings and speech impediment and all that, and thought to myself, how amazing is it that a young lady can take lemons and make lemonade, right? Can take the challenges of life and flip them in such a way that when she was going through the process of discovery of herself, who knows what discouragement she felt and had to fight through, especially when you're not told you're gifted, but rather you have an impediment. But she was developing even in the middle of that type of adversity, even if it was just mental adversity. So, you know, my thought process was, wow, at least I can relate to a journey in which one feels as if she or he is fighting for some kind of meaning and never know where it will lead, and wondering if it would just get them a sense of fulfillment if nobody else enjoys it. And then by 22 or 23, she's up there on the stage at the inauguration. It says to me that there are many diamonds in the rough, and there are many, you know, she didn't just come up with that overnight. That's something that over time she had to focus on and find herself in. And I reminded of a quote from Howard Thurman, who said, "Don't look and see what the world needs. Look and see within oneself what causes you to catch on fire. And the world will respond to what catches you on fire, because the world needs more people who have caught on fire." You see, there's this sense, but you don't seek for success. Some people are looking for success. You look for what catches your soul afire. And what catches your soul afire will ignite the world. And that's what we saw there. She didn't start out thinking one day Biden's going to run for president. I hope he chooses. You know, that's what a lot of people, I hope he chooses me. And I mean, you're doing this whole thing. And then they don't choose you. You don't get a job. You don't get in the school. You don't get a deal. You don't get elected. And then your whole dream falls apart, because it was all hinged upon what you believe the world needs. And the world rejected you and back at square one. But if you in it because your soul's on fire, they all walk away. My soul's on fire. Is the world will just catch on fire?
there, Soul on Fire. This is a little history for the people that don't know you or just learning about you. You used to be a musician, or you are a musician. You had a whole group of brothers. You have a whole legacy of musicians, and I personally know multiple of them and work with them as well. So could you talk a little bit about how your upbringing in music? I saw you posted the other day you were playing, you know, on the piano, like I'm tuning up, but that reminded me of your soul being on fire, because you had to have passion for it. So could you talk a little bit about that and how that's coming back to surface now?
Yeah, there was a time when I was little. My parents said I started when I was 2 years old, and there was a time when music was my everything. I don't remember a time that I didn't play music. I can tell you when I learned middle C, but I was already playing the piano at that time. It was as if, and even now, because I'm an artist at heart, everything that I do has an artistic expression in it. Even leading, when I'm leading, building the school, when I buy gifts for people, I don't do anything just to do it. Everything has a story to it, and it has a melody to it. And I seek to try to do things. Well, it kind of just, I do things that I can always explain it. You see, so
so you have backstories. Preachers have backstories for everything.
So everything is a narrative for me. If you can use that approach, it's always a narrative. It's always. I don't like to, if I'm doing it from my heart, it has heart in it. So and that comes from an artistic background. Even when I don't know the chord progressions, or I can't get it quite the way I want to play it physically, I hear the music in my soul. And so it's like a song in your soul. I remember when I was in college, and when I was in a grad school in Atlanta, and I drive back to Manchester, which is like an hour and a half. Many times I never turned on the radio, because the radio or music in that sense would disrupt the music I hear in my head. So it's amazing when it's in your soul. That's what I mean, the soul catch on fire. But already on fire. So it's you know what I mean? So and then I got to figure out how to match what I'm playing or what I'm doing with what I've already seen or already heard in my soul. And that comes partly because I was born and come from a very rural town, Manchester, Georgia, where you don't have all the inner city noise and all that. You have woods and things like that. Go walking in the woods, and you do a lot of dreaming and imagining, and someday something may happen, and you have all these visions about life. Then you read stories and you develop all this vision, and so it's already in you. And it's like, how does it come out? So that I really believe that's the sort of the core of who I am.
Absolutely. So can we take another turn? You have a new book called The White Man's Religion.
The White Man's Religion, right.
Absolutely. So I have had various debates about that term, the white man's religion. Would you expound a little bit about your book, what inspired it, that conversation, and what we should take away from it?
Okay. So the book, I was surprised at some of the controversy of the title of the book, but the reality is the title of the book is, I lifted it from an actual question that was raised in one of my classes.
Okay.
Was not jump to defense about the faith, not attack the question, but try to understand it. Just try to understand, where is this question coming from, and why is it becoming such a big discussion these days? So and I think as Christians, we got to do more listening than be quick to speak. The Bible talks to us about be quick to hear and slow to speak. So sometimes in order to defend the faith, we can't be defensive. So we hear and try to understand and try to get those points of entry, and then provide what the Bible say, be able to give an answer to everyone who asks a question according to the hope which lies within us. So that's where we get this concept of apologetics from. Apologia is a Greek term that means to defend the faith. So when we talk about, my book is an attempt at urban apologetics, a way to defend the faith without being defensive, but rather to try to affirm the question and all of the history that went into that conclusion, and then provide a new imagined way forward. So that's what the book is about. When people read it, they will see, I think, what I'm really trying to get at.
Yeah, and I bring that up because I remember when I first saw the title, is Christianity a white man's religion? I remember when I first saw the title, I was like, that was bold. You did it, Dr. Antipas. That was bold. Because, you know, most of us will have the, oh, well, is this going to defend these people that I'm trying to connect with? But you just obviously went there. And so that was a prime example of that fearlessness that we absolutely need to get the message across.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to be willing to listen and try to engage this generation. If we only talk to ourselves and dance around the issues for fear of offending somebody, you lose more people than you're trying to avoid offending. So I'm very concerned about the future of the faith. Not so much the faith itself, but the people that I believe can benefit from the faith, who are walking away from the faith because they have had questions that nobody's able to answer, or unwilling to answer, or questions that people won't allow them to ask. And anytime you have a question that people don't want you to ask, question, why don't they want me to ask this question? You see what I'm saying? Usually the devil is in the unwillingness to allow a person to ask a question. You know, I say the same thing about universities. You know, why is there a question that we can't ask here? Why is there a question that we can't explore? Why are you taking Black Lives Matter off of the table? Why are you taking critical race theory off the table and deeming it demonic with no explanation? What is it behind the fact that you think that this is not a discussion to have?
Yeah.
And to me, that's where you got to be careful. Not in discussing the issue, is wondering why, or you upset that I will ask such a question. See what I mean? So,
yeah. And asking it anyways.
You got to ask it anyway. And that's what fearlessness was in history, where people dared to ask the question, because life is full of answers. The big issue is, what are the questions? And I always tell my students, if you can't come to class with a good question, you're going to pay all this money and miss out on the education that you could have, because the education is a response to the questions you bring to it.
Wow, that is so powerful. What's your next one be called? No, I'm just kidding. Well, I know you have so many other things that you probably have to get to, but what would you say? I have some other names that, you know, I have listed, like, for example, Nick Cannon. He did this video called I Can't Breathe, you know, based off of the Floyd situation. And then you have her, the singer, who, you know, is, you know, leading a revolution right now. And yes, it's killing it. And, you know, how, what's your response when you see new young people, like we've mentioned, Amanda Gorman, and now you have her, and Nick Cannon's obviously not new, but he's still able to push the envelope visually with the videos and things like that. What's your response, I think, when you kind of see that, like those new people rising up right now as a leader?
I say keep rising to the call, and even they are doing extraordinary things, and there are even more talent among us. And if the issue is that talented people don't often see their own talent, because it's
Wow.
What's abnormal to us or what's incredible to us isn't so normal to them, that sometimes we have to have other people to discover our talent. And it's not because they're discovering something as if it doesn't exist, but they discover the value that we bring to the table. And that's why it's so important to surround yourself with people who celebrate you and not just people who criticize all the time. Because, you know, most talented people are talented and don't know it.
And
Yeah.
absolutely. Wow. But I will leave it there because I was about to ask 5
Go
more
ahead.
questions.
Go right on.
But thank you, Dr. Antipus. I hope maybe have to do a part 2 when you're available again. But thank you so much. Is there anything else that you kind of want to share just to inspire creatives in this time to create for change?
Keep creating with society in mind, because I cannot understate this. We need everybody. And everybody, there's room for everybody to be celebrated. Even though I know old models were, you know, one person has to be lifted up and everybody else has to just stand and hold that person up. But the reality is there's room for everybody's success. And there is not one person who I believe can, and I got to say this the right way because I really mean it this way. There cannot be a person that I want to see fail in order to make me a success.
Wow.
I want to see everybody succeed.
Yeah.
And I don't need somebody else to be on the floor for me to stand up on for me to be successful. And that's what I want to encourage other people. There's room for all of us to succeed, and we can all benefit from each other's talents and gifts. And if we work together, we all win. So that's what we got to win together.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Antipus. I'm inspired all over again and excited. Where can we find, where can people follow you on Instagram and you're on Facebook as well?
Yeah, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Dr. Antipas, at DRANTIPAS. That's at DRANTIPAS.
Awesome. And one last question before you go. Are you still involved with the Norfolk Arts?
Yeah, I'm still the president of the Urban Renewal Center. So we have a director now, full-time director, Jordan Brown, and we got great things happening there in Norfolk. We have been working with the homeless with the Nest Project, and was so thrilled for the work that they're doing with the First Presbyterian Church in Norfolk. From December 2nd to March the 24th, homeless have been sleeping at First Presbyterian Church, and several other churches have been taking turns and coming in and leading and making hot meals for them, and all in the middle of the pandemic. And I've been down a few times to be involved, because for me, it's a spiritual experience to be able to support people who are in need, and just having conversations with them and learn about the important work that their visions, their dreams, their aspirations, and learning about the challenges in our society as it relates to the homeless, and seeing so many young adults giving of their time. There are people who have their own businesses, high level employment in their workplace, and they would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go over there for the end of the morning to get our Nest guests, so they can transition out for the day, and then people get off from work and come in the evening for the intake and the support and talk to them. It is just a fantastic experience for me. I love to see when people give back in that way. And for me, it's not just giving back; it's the service of the Lord. And it is of inspiration to those who do it. I often say, I'm not sure who's getting the most out of this, the guest or me. I'm getting a lot out of just being able to feel that I'm connected with a cause that touches God's heart.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for rising to your call and inspiring all of us to do the same thing.
Yeah, thank you.
You had an amazing night. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Jasmine. It's great talking.
Yes,
All
sir. Yeah. Have a
right.
good.
Take care.
So I had such a fun time doing that interview. And even as I listened back, it just was kind of bringing back to memory the main things that he left with me, well, with us, was to remember that there's room for everybody at the table. Um, he talked a little bit about Amanda Gorman and her getting up to deliver her inaugural poem. Well, that was such a huge moment, but if she went into that room feeling any way inadequate or as an imposter, there's this term called the imposter syndrome, where you are in a room, you're called into the room, but you feel like you don't belong there, or you feel like it's too much, it's too bigger than you. Or that's like a thing, or in psychology, that's called the imposter syndrome, where we will count ourselves out of really, really important moments in life where maybe God wants to elevate you, or somebody else wants to partner with what you're doing, what you have going on. But when we sit and soak in looking at the room instead of looking at what we have, the power of your unique gifts and ability, your specific service and skill, to enhance everything else around you, it takes the pressure off of feeling like you don't belong in the room. Or the opposite of feeling like you got to push people out of the way just to get to the table. No, it's room for everybody at the table, as long as you're going for the table that is. As long as you are going for what's yours. Um, I talked a little bit earlier in the first episode about finding your audience, but those are the people that are looking for what you are and what you're saying. And that's a process that takes studying your analytics and insights and all of that to figure out who's listening for what you have to say. But somebody is. And that's the whole point of this, is that your voice is attached to some group of people somewhere. There is a table with your stuff on it. Don't let the imposter syndrome drive you to thinking that you don't belong there, and don't let competition or any of those things stop you from building and growing to be the brand, the person that you are. So I hope that interview was helpful. If you guys have any questions or even comments, I think today we launched our new website. Yay! We launched our updated website. It is envisionmedianow.com if you want to visit it. Let me try to drop that in here. You can visit envisionmedianow.com. I have a lot of new services or revamped services where you guys can kind of check out how to work with me, how to kind of get in touch with our team. We do different creative projects and consulting for any of your social media needs. We kind of handle that or get you connected to the correct person. But check that out. It's envisionmedianow.com. Thank you guys. I'm going to try to get back on next week. Definitely drop me some questions in the comments if you have any type of branding, social media, digital media questions. See you guys next week. Enjoy your weekends.